like, yeah, I'm shopping for groceries, but I'm also picking up all these emotions all around the store, and I'm just observing them and playing with it because there's nothing I'm planning to do about it anyway. But after the pandemic, I thought, well, so if I don't want to be plugged into someone, I could just take a few steps back, literally, physically, and break that aura connection and unplug their guitar, basically, if I don't want to hear it so loud, right? And then as an observer, now I'm back on the beach, right? I can see the wave happening. I'm not having it come up through my own aura field as an amplifier. And so that's one of the things I would say when my husband has a wave that I am not sure where we're going with this, I will like literally just kind of sit back in my chair or push back a little bit and try to put 6 feet between us so I can observe the wave without having to be in it yet until I decide if I need to be in it and experience it with him because he needs that help and support, or if I just need to stay detached and not react. That's the big thing, is not reacting. Because there's really, like, I just want to reaffirm for you and for everybody that's listening, like, there is literally nothing you can do to stop the wave once it's happening. It's a complete waste of your time. Don't try. And it also sends a invalidating message to the person having it that it's not okay with you that they're having a feeling. And especially with kids, that's not something I want to practice anymore. It's okay that you're having this feeling. I just don't want you to hurt anybody. Do you need a lot of times I have them come in for a hug because especially, there's a different dynamic when it's like a partner situation versus parent kids. So like I picture myself as the sand on the beach, which does like kind of mute the sound of the wave as it comes and it crashes, and then it kind of, I love ocean sounds too.
Yeah.
All of my spiritual experiences in life have happened next to a body of water. So I'm totally into this metaphor so much.
Well, and
anyways, I'll come in for a hug and I will visualize myself as the sand and just let them crash. I literally like hold into their feeling then, and I don't say anything. And I just let it come and come and come. And they will cry or they'll scream into my chest or whatever. But you can start to feel their shoulders relax down, and then they start breathing different. And then I know that it's starting to dissipate. And then I go, "Are you okay?" And they can talk then. But they just are letting it through at the first, right? And I think that does help them feel safer having them because they're not alone in the experience. I consider just like letting them go to their room to have them somewhere safe, right? But I also I don't like to use that tool too much because I don't want to give them the impression that I can't deal with this. So go to your room, So instead we've couched that as like, you have an option to go to your room if you feel safer there. Otherwise you can come here and I can hold you while this is happening. So sorry, go ahead.
You are their safe place. Well, it's beautiful what you were just saying, right? Because this starts to even pose the question of what does it mean to be in a safe place to experience an emotion?
I want to tie that back to your book because I know you wanted to talk about that more because that's really honestly, one of the big themes of your book, right?
You guys know I have a book and it's about big emotions. You can go check it out on Amazon if you want to and see if it's a good resource for you. For me, the most important thing is that this information gets out to people, like whether it's through a conversation. This book is just a resource for people. Plus, I think it's very cutely illustrated because I cannot draw at all. But the illustrator, Danny Summerfield, did a great job drawing. So anyways, but I say all that to say, like, my purpose of being here with you is really just to help educate people and raise awareness. Whether you buy the book or you don't buy the book is not as important to me as just, I worked as a speech therapist for many years and I felt so manifestor. I felt so angry. Anger is a really great feedback emotion for me that I felt like we needed more tools for kids and parents. And I felt like a lot of what was happening was a lot of conditioning. Like we were just conditioning kids to be like, just do this, do it how, and not all speech therapy there. But I always thought I wasn't as good of a speech therapist because my greatest asset in speech was my intuition and my empathy and those more soft skills. And so what you were just sharing, I think is such, like, I'm so glad that you're undefined and I'm defined and we're able to have this conversation for your audience today because, again, building on this metaphor of the beach, like you can learn to be a safe space for somebody who's having an emotional wave. And there's so much importance in co-regulation with other people. And so kudos to you that you've learned how to regulate yourself. And that doesn't mean like go out and hug everybody at the grocery store and be their safe space. I would argue not to do that.
I would too.
However, right. But like that also goes to show you like, you know, and I think with emotional people who don't have an emotional wave, who have an undefined solar plexus, like also giving yourself space to have distance from it and to sit back from it and watch it. Because like you said, I love what you said. You can't stop it once it starts. And why would you want to?
Right.
You know, it's kind of like, it makes me think of Footloose. And they were like, no music, what, no one dance, no one move your bodies. It's like, okay, well, what does that lead to? We're going to find a way to do it anyways. So I think there's a lot of beauty in being able to, number one, if you are on the side of having an emotional wave, feel it, accept it, love it, recognize that it only takes 60 to 90 seconds to move. It is information. Get somewhere that you are safe where you can. If you have somebody to co-regulate with, my friend Amanda, who introduced us and connected us. Mm-hmm. She's one of like, she has an open solar plexus and she lives in Philly and I live in, she doesn't live in Philly, but she lives in Pennsylvania and I live in Florida. And she helps me co-regulate so much because I'm like, I'm having this feeling. And she's like, your feeling is valid. And I'm like, you're right. It is valid, you know, but also for her, she knows when enough is enough. And when she needs to go like, okay, hold on, this is too much for me this morning. I'm going to go put my feet on the ground or whatever. In whatever capacity. It doesn't even necessarily have to be with me. It can be in any time. There's a lot of emotional energy. So I think that the thing is really trusting yourself to know your own capacity on either side, whether you have an emotional wave or not, and just starting to, through experimentation and willingness and curiosity, to just discover what those processes are for you. Because I propose in the book movement, and I've been talking a lot about using music, you know, putting on a sad song when you're sad and moving with the emotion. I love to dance, but those are just some of the ways that I've done it.
Yeah, those are great. So you do have a lot of wisdom about the solar plexus. I know I am excited about your book because I think it's adorable. And you're right, the illustrator did a fantastic job. But yeah, I'm finding what works for you. Like just a reminder to everyone who's listening, it is an experiment. I mean, we talk about trying to figure it out, but that figuring it out in my understanding is a function of our mind, like trying to figure it out, right? Figure out the pattern or whatever. But really, we're just, like you said, a spiritual being having an experience in a physical plane. And it's not maybe necessarily necessary for us to get it all perfected in this lifetime. Maybe the joy is in experimenting with it and figuring out what works for us. And even though we both coach people with human design, I'm sure I'm confident based on everything we've talked about today and the last time we visited, that you're probably like me. I don't, as a coach, tell people do it this way because this is what works for me. Because my energy is different than I'm actually a really rare design. So pretty much most of the things that work for me maybe won't work for other people. It's good to approach it with a spirit of curiosity, and people that are learning human design for the first time listening to this. Everything we've learned has been a lot of trial and error from working with our own energy and just we use the human design tool to really just become more aware of what's going on and to give us some language to talk about it and process it. But then we're still like, okay, well, that didn't work that well. Let's try something different, you know?
Yeah.
And this is just what works in my family with my emotionally defined people. I don't know if it would work with other kids. Every kid's honestly really different. I mean, we're as unique as our own fingerprints, honestly.
Yeah.
So I can even tell you that for emotionally divine people in my family, what I do is slightly different with each one of them because one of them is really sensitive to any kind of form of rejection. So I can't even raise my voice to him, because that sounds like there's something wrong with me. And then, that's a whole different shame that I'm not trying to give him. So,
Totally.
it's really, I love the human design tool as a parent, as a coach, because it gives us just a place to start. This is how your car's supposed to run well. your vehicle or whatever. And then if it's not working in this way, where is the conditioning? What pieces can we take out? What can we add in? And it's all an experimental. It's just let's just try
Totally.
something. If it works, get some data, come back to it with a fresh perspective, and prayer too. I mean, I know you're a very spiritual person. I'm a spiritual person. So like I lean into the universe, my higher self, for the stuff I don't understand yet. There's plenty I don't understand. So
I think the two, as you were just talking, the two words that came to me are just empathy and curiosity. And I think being able to model for our kids, like, I am not perfect, because I think just even the traditional schooling system and society is like, you're going to turn this age and you're going to get there. And I think the thing I have learned through my own evolution is like, there really is no there, right? Like
yeah.
that every beginning has every ending has a new beginning to it. And
Yeah.
I think the more that, were you a quote bad mom because you told your kids to not feel you wanted to figure out how to mitigate emotions? No, you're
Nope.
not at all. You're a great mom, and you did the best you could with what you had at the time. Was I a bad speech therapist maybe when I had the same kind of reaction to a kid? It's like, don't feel that, because we need to get to the speech therapy. We got to make sure we can say
Yeah.
the letter P. Like, no, that's just where we were at. And
Right.
when you learn, you do better. When you try something, you do better. So none of this is a rule book to say do it perfectly. It's just, whether it's human design, whether it's the book, whether it's whatever, they're just tools to raise our awareness.
Yeah.
And you just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
There's stuff I don't know. I have these great tools, but there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And so if I'm unwilling to stay open and curious and have empathy for myself and others, I'm going to miss out on a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And I loved the word you used about using your intuition as a speech therapist. I'm
Mhm.
like, I would have loved to have you as a teacher if you were intuitive, because, and we've talked about this in our previous time together, that there is a new paradigm for education coming. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to do a shameless plug for my we have another new podcast coming that I'm co-hosting with my friend Jessica Ann, different Jess, about preparing human design for parents and educators. But we're really trying. You inspired one of your comments inspired us to talk about, like, really, is that the new paradigm for education, this intuitive led or soul led education? Because it gives us the room to say, okay, yes, this is the curriculum. Yes, these are the goals we're working towards. But in this moment, what does this child need to be safe, to be able to be in the most optimal learning experience that they can have, whether you're doing that one-on-one in a speech therapy or tutoring situation, or doing it in a classroom. It's a little more difficult when you have multiple kids in the classroom, but you can still rely on the intuitive work, like working with the energy in the room in an intuitive way, and maybe not pushing to the next lesson because something in you is saying these guys are disconnecting and we need a minute to maybe talk about something before we can move on with this lesson. I think it's brilliant, that intuitive. I wish you could write a curriculum teaching, and maybe you can,
Maybe I
teaching
will.
people how to just be an intuitive educator, because I really think that's the key to the next like 25 or 40 years of our collective existence. So
Totally. I love that you said that. I had an old boss that I've stayed really close with. We lose contact every once and again, but there's that closeness that you just get each other. And she had asked me to come in and teach her company around using your intuition
oh,
in
nice.
your speech therapy, because, I will say one of the things that used to upset me 10 years ago was I felt like an alien, because I was like, no one's seeing this and no one's getting it. And there's this whole family system. And at times, and this is just the paradigm. It's just the way that we've been taught to think. A lot of the times it felt like people were coming to me saying, hey, something's wrong with my kid, fix it. Which is okay. And it's understandable, right? There's a problem. I'm the person who knows how to change it. But oftentimes what I would see is so many other challenges that were going on: family trauma, food insecurity, behavioral. How much I remember when I first became a speech therapist, I would say to my mom, I'd call her and I'd be like, 80% of what I'm working with is behavioral. And why do we have behaviors? Like we want the attention of our parent, or again, maybe we're not
Yes.
eating the right foods. Kids would
Right.
come in eating these foods and you could see the hyperactivity build in them. And then they're sitting at school. So there's so many different
Yeah.
factors to it. But what I
Right.
will say is a lot of what I was strongly feeling 10 years ago that I think I also, made my own self wrong for, because I was like, well, this doesn't fit the system of what everyone else is saying. And so um, a lot of what ended up happening was I am now seeing, like, I'm meeting people here who are like, oh yeah, I have a company and I incorporate Reiki with occupational therapy, or I incorporate this and this. And I'm like, my time has come. My time
You
is
were just
here. I'm
ahead of
coming
the
back in,
time.
baby.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a prior career as a counselor too, and I remember people always saying, like, "I just feel like you get me," and I'm like, I could not articulate what was different because, and I had a great mentor in my early days in counseling who said, because I was kind of trying to copy her style in group situations because I felt like she was the expert, and I was trying to learn, and she just pulled me aside one day and said, "Please stop trying to copy me. I see you trying so hard to sound like me, and you're going to find your own style. Just listen to your insides and you'll know what to say." And I was like, that's I mean, what a brilliant, I really should send her a thank you card because the whole 12 years of counseling and learning to listen to my intuition when I'm working with an adult helped prepare me to be a better educator when I became a homeschool mom, because I don't feel, I mean, we had a curriculum in counseling too, as a substance abuse counseling. So they had like mandatory things we had to go over, but still, like you said, the person themselves maybe had food insecurity or was homeless or had trauma or was just recently removed from a domestic violence situation. I mean, like, it isn't just like I'm on probation and I don't want to go to jail. That's not the whole picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, my kids luckily don't have quite those many problems. But I love the idea of just looking at them as a whole person and what's going on, and then you even add the layer of my soul is here to take it. My soul has a curriculum and a task we're supposed to go through, and a lot of times, especially for the transpersonal incarnation crosses, that is involving other people, other relationships, whether that's the counselor, the speech therapist, whoever. And I don't know where those karmic connections are going to come untied and I can move on to the next lesson. So I can't drive this car. I have to just sit back and go, where are we going? How can I be most supportive? And what are we supposed to be learning here that we can learn so we can move on? And it is a
Totally.
totally intuitive process. I feel like such kindred spirits over that. So, but we are just about
Totally.
out of time. So I want to just give you, I mean, what else, if you could go back, I always ask all my guests this, if you could go back and celebrate one thing your parents did well with your human design chart, what would you celebrate? What would you thank them for?
Mm, that is such a great question.
Because they didn't know human design, right? Or
They
none of our
didn't
parents,
know.
we're 80s
The
babies. None of
the
our
old
parents knew human design yet. So,
cool,
but they still
exactly.
intuitively did some things right. So,
The older I get, the more grateful I feel for my parents, and the luckier I feel to have had parents who really did love and care about me very, very deeply and unconditionally. I think that my parents always, my parents always, I don't want to say allowed me to, but to some degree, really allowed me to be myself. Was there conditioning around, you know, being a manifestor with anger and things like that, and probably at my emotional wave? Yeah, for sure. But they always encouraged me to be me. And that was a beautiful thing. So
it is a
thanks,
beautiful
mom
thing.
and dad.
Yeah, thanks, mom and dad. We were latchkey kids, so I just think my brother and I are both non-sacral beings. We had tons of unregulated, and where we were away from other generators for like an hour and a half, 2 hours every afternoon of our lives growing up. And I used to resent it because I was the oldest and I was in charge, and he was a manifestor, so he didn't listen to me at all. He'd literally say, "You're not my mom," and I'm like, "You're absolutely right. And if I had any control over you, you wouldn't be this naughty."
Yeah, that's so funny.
But anyway, looking back on it now, I really, want to thank my parents for. I'm sure they only had to do that because of their work situation and our financial situation. But still, as non-sacral beings, we really needed that time to just. Our house was our our science lab basically. Like, I'd worked on music a lot in the afternoons. My brother tinkered with stuff. He'd take like boom boxes apart and put them back together again with bigger speakers. And, he just could tinker without a lot of hovering or direction from our parents. So anyway,
Totally.
yeah. Well, thank you for being on the show, and remind our listeners where they can get your book if they want it, and how they can get a hold of you if they want to. And I'm so glad that we got to meet and have this time together.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. This was a very cool conversation that I think brought two really different and interesting perspectives. So thank you for having me. And
Yes.
Jessie Lou and the Magic of You, it is on Amazon. And yeah, I'm on Instagram at Jess Bubbico.
Yay. Sounds good. And I will put all that in the show notes for our listeners too. Thank you again for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful, not rainy afternoon.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.